Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very tired and cold throttle grotto. Week, I don't have much to report. I've got some parts on the way. I've ordered a bell housing to go with a torque tube so I can start measuring and figuring things out. I have talked to a couple of vendors. Some can do the flywheel, some can't. But as long as one person can, that's really all I need. A short explanation of why I'm tired. I did a 17-mile trail run on Saturday, and I have to go back to working nights tonight. So my body's all messed up. A few of you posted in the comments that I needed to look at the bottom of the transmission to confirm the transmission code. Because the one that's on the back of the housing is not necessarily correct. So we're going to do that. And I'm going to spend a little time just cleaning up the transmission today. I know it's not super exciting work, but it's one of those things. I have a little bit of time before I need to go inside and sleep for a few hours before a 12-hour shift tonight. So I figured I'd come out here and at least work on the transmission a little bit, get it cleaned up, make it easier to deal with later. We'll look at the transmission and see what code the transmission is. All right, I should back up just a little bit. One of the things that I did do earlier this week is I drained the fluid. Now it was actually full, as we figured out, but looking at the transmission fluid that was in here, there's not much particulate in it. Actually looks like a pretty clean batch of just really old fluid from a transmission. It probably had never been changed. Or if it had been a really long time based on the smell. But overall, I'm pretty happy. There's a little bit of flake in there, which I guess I would expect to see a little bit. Not enough to make me worried. Some of you may have different opinion on that, but overall, the transmission fluid looked pretty good. All right, this should be the fun part. As tired as I am, let's see if I can roll this thing over and get a good visual of the transmission code. Oh, God. That's as far as I'm going with that. Okay, so what we're looking for is right here on the bottom side of the case. We're looking at the transmission code here. Look at that, G28132, which definitely confirms that we have a limited slip differential in here. And the much better 13 later gears and synchros, which makes that trip completely worth the time. So now, I guess it's scrubbing and cleaning time. Okay, I think I have a plan. Check out this sophisticated piece of equipment we got here. Got a couple of old pieces of 4x here that I had laying around, and this old shelf, and a pretty decent size drain pan. So I'm just kind of making a shelf that I can set this beastie up on, and then all of the junk should fall, or at least most of the junk should fall through the grate into the pan and keep my floor mostly clean. I do have this coin mat down so I can clean stuff up a little easier than if it was on concrete, but this will probably break. All right, revision 2, because I figured revision 1 had already failed. Apparently, these plastic shelves aren't really designed to handle the weight of a transmission. So maybe a few pieces of wood will help keep this from falling through, because I doubt I'm going to get this done all in one day. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I think I've already exceeded the capacity of the shelving unit and probably my tired back. Now I get to scrub or scrape or clean or whatever. All right, with some primitive type equipment here, I feel like I did a pretty good job on this. There's still some spots that need to be gone over with a brush or whatever. Maybe I just take this to the car wash at this point, now that it's clean enough that I can reasonably like show up and spray it off. Let me flip this thing around and I'll show you kind of what we started with. The shelf's not happy about all this, but yeah, I mean, just for like pretty basic tools, I got it pretty clean. So for whatever reason, this side isn't quite as bad. Yeah, most of this you can see just kind of scrapes off and turns to dirt. I don't have enough hands. There we go. Yeah, so you can see it kind of scrapes off fairly easy, actually, and just kind of piles up or whatever. So this side will go a little quicker, and then I'll probably just run it, now that it's not as bad, I'll run it through the engine cleaner stuff at the car wash, and then it should be sufficiently restored. A couple hours of sleep. I got this giant box of bell housing, which I'm going to open up and check out here. Most importantly, I'm going to check and see if it works with the clutch that I have. All right, so I don't suppose it would have killed them to include the other 4 bolts for the bottom of the bell housing. But looks like we have 13 5/8 of room across there, and that is 13.5. So pretty sure this is the right one. So for those of you that don't know, the 928 bell housing is in 2 pieces, so that you can access the bottom of the clutch assembly and slide the clutch parts in and out of the bell housing. Maybe if you put it in the right way. All right, I'm going to say that looks appropriately sized for this setup. It's clearly not in the right spot. Still doesn't seem like it's playing nice. I have the clutch parts here, but I won't necessarily be able to use those because we're going to have to go with a custom flywheel, pressure plate, and clutch disc. All right, so if you're following the build that Jimmy Oakes is doing in his 911, sorry, I'm washing my hands. He is using the Squonkworks adapter to get all of his engine mounts and everything fabbed up in the right spots before he gets an adapter plate and clutch and all that stuff. I don't have that luxury because A, I didn't ask Squonk Works to borrow their adapter plate. B, I'm a YouTuber with 3,000 subscribers, not 300,000. So I kind of got to figure out on my own. All right, pulled this sensor off of here because we're not going to use that. We already have the correct sensor for the Maserati engine inside here. So it doesn't need to be, we don't need two sensors. So basically what we need to do is at some point I'm going to have to pull off all of the studs because apparently studs are not going to work with an adapter plate. Maybe they will. I don't know. Looks like the bottom ones are going to be the big... This one right here is going to be the big problem. I freely admit I tried to double nut these, and double nutting it wouldn't pull it out. I got frustrated and just used the vice grips. I'll try to double nut the rest of these later. For now, I really just want to see how far off I really am in getting this to line up. And oh my God. This is why you shouldn't do car work when you're tired. Okay, so let me show you where we're at here so far. Very roughly centered. And I mean very. It's clearly not straight because I have one more stud in here that is holding things up. You can see here that it's sort of lined up. The hard part is going to be getting the center of the torque tube to line up at the center of the crankshaft. And then here, you can look in here and see that lip on the inside of the bell housing bottom half is sitting right up against the block. Now we are going to have to make an adapter plate, and this piece will probably need to be trimmed down some. Problem is that is also what holds the clutch in place. Or, sorry, the clutch slave. So if you look here, that piece down there comes out, and that's where the clutch slave bolts in. Oh no, that got ugly real fast, didn't it? Okay, so after removing a couple of studs, we can try to fit the bell housing up to the engine and at least see how bad off we're going to be. Can already tell there's going to be a problem with this water tube. Oh, and the bigger problem. I'm just going to try to clock this appropriately. All right, so I've just got this basically just hanging here right now. I'll show you what is going on. Here we have the gap between the bell housing and the engine, which is fine. This is probably, I can get my thumb between there. The reason that there's a gap is because of this flange here, which is where the clutch the clutch slave attaches and actuates from, which is directly behind the engine. So I really have to come up with a way to fix that problem. So one of the ideas I had late last night was the current, and when I say late last night, I mean in the middle of my work day. So one of the ideas I had was this bell housing adapter, which is for the automatic transmission, which goes behind the engine. One of the issues is it definitely stacks deep. Like, this is thick. This is 4 inches deep. It does solve one problem. It doesn't quite solve the other. But so I still have this whole giant lip here to deal with. All right, in some strange weird universe, this probably lines up perfectly. We have a little bit of progress. So clearly we're still running into, well, I'll just show you. So clearly we're still running into the bottom of the bell housing adapter. Just not great. I opened the garage door and got in the creeper so that I could lay down. So as you can see, I could cut some stuff out of this bell housing adapter. I still need the sad part is I still need a plate to make all this line up properly. It's not solving the problem at all, unfortunately. So I still need to adapt. Although in this case, I only have to adapt half the bell housing. Like, I don't have to adapt all the way around. I just have to get the upper half to be bolted on, because this is just a cover. This just goes on the bottom. And I guess depending on where you look, it's pretty centered. So the next thing to do is to measure and see how much room I have here versus the length of the clutch. All right, so a real quick cursory measurement underneath the car shows that it's about a 4.5 inch flange depth. So let's go 5. If it's 5, it's just going to barely fit in here. So it's plausible that this dimension here could work. The other problem is, will it fit in the car? So if we go from, let's just take a real quick measurement here. Try to doing everything one-handed is terrible. So let's say from the bell housing to the front, absolute front of the engine, we're looking at 30, well, we'll go to that hose fitting there, 31 inches. And if we go over to the car, and of course, you can't get to anything because everything is so wedged and jammed in this dumb car. So let's just make an approximation. We'll go from the firewall and we'll go 31 inches. So 31 inches is going to put it right at the edge of where my radiator fan is, which is not going to fit. I mean, it would be, I think 30 was to the pulley, so it would be close, but that's pushing the engine really far forward in the chassis, which I didn't want to do. So for now, I'm stuck. If you have any ideas, leave them in the comments below. Yeah, for now, I don't know how to solve this, and I don't have the connections to talk to people to solve this. So part of the solution might be a Maserati bell housing clutch assembly from like F1, like the F1 transmission, which does have a traditional clutch. It does have an actuator built into this side of the bell housing. It does reverse the direction of the clutch actuation. When the 928 clutch activates, the lever pushes this way, the little arm sticks out here and releases the clutch this way. The Maserati stuff is reverse of that. So I think this is a pull type clutch. The Maserati stuff is a push type clutch. Either way, it's going to be custom. But this is the benefit of doing it on the garage floor and not in the car. If I would already built mounts and everything and had the engine in the car, I'd be in a world of hurt. So I'm going to let that marinate for a bit. So that is all from a very disappointing episode of Throttle Grotto. Click like and subscribe. You know how to do all that stuff. If you want to keep seeing more updates and more frustrations on the F136 project. So that's all from Throttle Grotto. Until next time, get out there and work on something.